Today's daf we're going to be learning is Gittin Daf Ayin. We're going to continue with our remedies and then move into some health advice and all sorts of other related issues. Then we're going to get back to our original Mishnah. So the Gemara starts off with Chazizta. We're continuing with all this list of things. This seems to be some skin disease. Leiteshev chite arziniata. Take 7 large wheat kernels. V'niklinu amar chadita. Roast them on a new hoe, and then get some ointment out of that, some cream, some oil out of there, and rub it on your body. So Rav Shimi Bar Ashi did this for someone who was sick, a Gentile who had this skin disease, and it actually cured him. Amar Shmuel, this person who they attacked him with, they stabbed him with these Persian spears. He will not be, okay, Shmuel, by the way, was a doctor, just so you know. So he says if somebody got stabbed with Persian spears, he's not going to live. But if you want to extend their life a little bit, prepare for him, have him eat meat, fatty meat on coals, and undiluted wine. Porta will let him live a little bit longer. He'll be able to give out his will and what he wants you to do with all of his property. Right? This is a big deal. Before someone dies, besides you want to have your chance to say goodbyes, they're worried about the finances and they want to give him a little bit more time to live for that reason. Amar Rav Idi Bar Avin, if someone swallowed a hornet, there's no way they're going to live. But in the meanwhile, give him some drink, have him drink a revid, a quarter log of sharp vinegar. This will give him a little bit longer to live, and he'll be able to tell his family what to do with his money. If you eat meat from an ox with turnips, and if you sleep out in the moonlight of a full moon in the 14th or the 15th of the month in the summer months, you will get sick with a fever. Okay, so avoid doing that. I don't know if you're planning any camping trips on a full moon in the middle of the summer, but if you do, don't eat meat with turnips. Tana, and the Braita says, if you eat everything in sight, right? This is someone who can't control how much they eat. By the way, this achilu seems to be some fever. Okay, you'll get a fever from this. You'll get a fever from what we just said a minute ago. And Amarav Papa Filu Mitamli, even if you eat too many dates, Shita, to which they say, obviously, why are dates any different than anything else? Well, Sakadat Achimini, you might have thought. Ho'ilva Amar Mar, because it was said, Tamre Misaban, Umishachnan, Umishalshlan, Umashran, below Mafankan, dates satiate, they warm your body, they're a laxative, they make you feel good, and they don't spoil you because even though they're sugary, they're not like other sugar items. Maybe because they're natural sugars. Ema low, you might have thought maybe it's not a problem to eat too many. Kamash malan, don't eat too many dates. My achilu, Amar Rabbi Elazar, eshel atzamot. My eshel atzamot. So what is achilu? Amar Rabbi Elazar, it's fire of your bones, basically like a fever. What is eshel atzamot? Amar Rabbi, esh garmin. Okay, that's just the translation into Aramaic, which we actually understand the Hebrew better. Maya sute, what do you do to cure it? Amar Rabbi, Amar Li'em, my woman who took care of him, told him, Kulu shakyane tlata v'shiva utre. So this might sound familiar. Most medications you do for 3 days, 7 days, or 12 days. Right nowadays, it's usually you have antibiotics 3 days, 7 days, or 10 days. In those days, it was 12 days. But high antimitase. But this drug for this kind of fever, you take until you get better. Okay, which means I guess it could be 3 days, it could be 15 days. Kulu shakyane aliba rekana. This sounds like medication instructions you get with medications. All other medications you eat on an empty stomach. This isn't exactly what you might get instructions for, but the first one, yes. This was after you eat and drink on a full stomach, but tells you also after you go to the bathroom and after you leave and have already washed your hands. To be saying it's important to wash your hands, I guess the germs off, then you take this medication. And then you take a handful of shatita, which was a cooked dish made of tlafeche, which is lentils, ubuna, and a handful of chamra atika, of old wine. And you mix those together and you eat them. Then you wrap yourself in a sheet and go to sleep. But nobody should wake you up until you get up on your own. And when you get up, you take the sheet off yourself. And if not seemingly, if you don't do all these things, then it'll come right back. Amarle Eliyahu Rabbanit. Eliyahu appears to Rabbanit and tells him, fill up your stomach with a third food, a third drink, but make sure you leave a third of your stomach open. Don't overeat. Because when you get angry, you'll have nowhere to put your anger. It seems like your anger needs to go in your stomach. You need some empty space. Otherwise, you're going to explode, right? And imagine when you get angry, when your body's already kind of full, there's no room for the anger to go. So it's dangerous in that sense. It's obviously dangerous in other reasons too. Or I don't know, dangerous, but unhealthy. If you don't want to get sick in your intestines, dip your bread in the winter and the summer. If you really are enjoying a meal, don't eat too much. And don't delay when you need to go to the bathroom. Don't hold it in, right? Go straight to the bathroom. It's very unhealthy. Right? Some of these things you would say the same thing nowadays, right? Some of these things are really out there, but some of them are totally normal. Those who drink white wine, which is like was considered this chibara as a bad wine, a bad white wine, you'll get weak. There's 60 types of wine. Rav Chisda says, this very fragrant red wine is known to be the best. And Guria de Kulu, the worst of the worst, is Tilya Chivara, this Tilya Chivara we were talking about before. Amar Rav Yehuda, if you're in the mornings of Nisan, you sit in near the fire and put on cream or oils, and then you go sit outside in the sun, you will get weak. This could be like a sunstroke. Right? People used to, when I was younger, people used to put oil on their skin maybe people still do. Nowadays, we all know how dangerous it is. Not good for your body, but maybe some people still do it. Anyway, maybe that's what's going on here. And I guess also your body was hot from the fire. And it seems to be a little bit more than just that. Now we're starting a whole section about sexual relations and things you shouldn't do before. And it seems to be, number one, these aren't healthy for you because you're already weak. So you shouldn't, when you're in a weakened state, have sexual relations. The second thing is that they couch them in terms of you will have children with the following problems, which is always a very dangerous way to go, to be talking in this kind of language. And it's hard to, we want to try to think what the rabbis were doing when they were discussing these things and why they said these kind of things. Because it's kind of like playing God. How do you know why people have, the first one's going to be, you'll have weak children. The next one is you'll have children with this disease called Ra'atan. And it's hard to know really what causes it. Number one, it could be the way they were couching it to scare people into not doing these things by saying you'll have children. Right? It's one of the things that always scares parents. You want to make sure your children are healthy. So this will prevent people from doing the following things, which they viewed as dangerous. And that's probably why they said these things. But again, they're still a little hard to hear and a little hard, right? And the other thing you have to remember is just like nowadays, if somebody has a child born who has complicated medical issues or other developmental issues, right? The first question the parents ask are, number one, what do we do to deserve this? Number two, what caused this? What did I do when I was pregnant? Did I take medication that I shouldn't have taken, right? And this is all like what you see on those medications. Do not take this if pregnant, or if you're pregnant, please check with your doctor to make sure. And this is really, it's different because their lives were different and the way they look at things are different, but it's really somewhat similar to it. So let's start with at least that in our mind in a way of dealing with reading these sugyot. Hikis dam v'shemesh mitato. If you did bloodletting and then you had relations, havia lo banim v'itkin. Your children, if you have a child born from that day, then you'll end up with weak children. Hikizu shnehem v'shimshu. They really thought that bloodletting, you shouldn't have relations right after. Hikizu shnehem v'shimshu. Both of them bloodlet, the husband and the wife. Havia lo banim ba'alei ra'atan. Then you're going to get this. The children will have this disease ra'atan. Some people think it's leprosy. other opinions about what exactly it is. Amar Rav Papa, but then Rav Papa comes and limits this and says, Lo amaran ela de lo ta'imidi. It's only if you didn't eat anything about ta'imidi leilam ba. But if you ate something, then there's no issue. Amar Rabba bar Afuna, ba min haderech v'shimesh mitato. If you came from a long trip, and you're very tired, and then you have relations, havi labanim vitkin. You're also going to have very weak children. Tanu Rabbanan, habami beit hakisei al yishamesh mitato ad sheyeshesh shiur chatzi mil. Okay, this is a bit of a weird one. When you're coming back from the bathroom, remember they were outside the city or outside somewhere. There were more outhouses, and there was always a concern that there were evil spirits lurking there. In fact, women used to go in pairs to avoid that problem. Anyway, it says here, don't have relations until you wait a chatzim, the amount of time it would take to walk a half a mile, which is 9 minutes, according to most commentaries. Because the evil spirit that lurks in the bathroom seems to walk you back. So after 9 minutes, you'll probably have gotten rid of him, but make sure he's not with you. When you have relations, that was a concern. It would cause problems. V'im shimesh, and here we're going to see what happens if you did anyway. Then havi lo banim nichvin, you're going to have epileptic children. Tanu Rabbanan, again, this is very specific about what it's going to cause. And again, it's hard to believe, that really is the case, but it was a way of, I guess, warning you. If you have relations when you're standing, you're going to be struck with spasms. Miyushav, while you're sitting, deloria, you're going to have some disease called deloria. We don't really know what that is. If the woman is on top and the man is on the bottom, which was something the rabbis often discouraged, not all rabbis were against it, but it was this idea, this wasn't necessarily an ideal way of doing things for tzniut purposes, it seems, for modesty reasons. Deloria, then also you'll get this disease. Again, a way of scare tactics, as we call them. My deloria. Now, you might have thought this is telling you what is the disease deloria, but actually they're saying, what do you do if you have deloria? Rav Papa, sorry, I skipped. Amar Rav Yeshua ben Levi, Sam deloria dardara. Okay, use dardara, which is a type of plant. My dardara, what type of plant is it? Amar Abaye molika dechochi, it's saffron of the thorns. Rav Papa alis ubalale, he would chew it and swallow it. Rav Papi alis v'shadele, he would chew it and spit it out. Okay, there were different beliefs about whether you should actually eat it or not. Amar Abaye, misha eno baki b'derech eretz, one who doesn't have the strength to have sexual relations. This is something, right, people always go to deal with if you're having trouble having sexual relations. So what do? Lete tlata kapize korteme dechoche. So, right, this is like the Viagra, okay? Ancient Viagra, what do? Take 3 vessels full. The vessels were 3/4 of a log in size of korteme dechoche, of safflower thorns, vinidokinu, and then chop them up, vinishlakinu, and cook them together b'chamra, in wine, vinishte, and drink it. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, hein hem tziruni l'na'avotai. So Rabbi Yochanan says, this brought me back to my previous days. Okay, so here you see kind of a funny sugya about that, issues that concern some people nowadays also concern them then, and they had remedies for these things. These are things that make a man weak in terms of being able to have sexual relations properly. Eluhein, pachad, fear, derech, long, trips, ve'avon, and sin. How do we know this? From psukim. Pachad, each one is going to be in a pasuk that relates to koach, strength. And they're going to say the strength here they understand to be sexual strength. Pachad dechtiv libi scharchar zavuni kochi, my heart flutters about, which is like from fear. And that, I have my strength left me. Derech dechtiv ina b'derech kochi. Again, from the walk, I lost my strength. Avon dechtiv kashal ba'ovani kochi. Okay, my sin, I lost my strength failed me. There's 3 things that break a person's body. Eluhein, achal mu'umad, he ate standing up. We always make jokes in my house, you're going to get fat legs, you shouldn't eat standing up. It's always looked at as not a good thing, also in the Gemara. Shatam mu'umad, you shouldn't drink standing up. Vishimesh mitato mu'umad, and you shouldn't have relations standing up. These 5 things bring you closer on the scale of life to death, closer to death. What are they? Achal v'amad, eating standing up. Shata v'amad, drinking and standing up. Yikiz dam v'amad, you bloodlet and stood up. This is, by the way, like the bloodletting, it's like when you get up after you take blood, right? Or you donate blood, all the more so, right? If you get up right away, you might faint. Yashen va'amad. If you were sleeping and you get up right away, sometimes, right, your blood pressure drops. Shimesh, when you feel dizzy. Shimesh mitato va'amad. You have relations and immediately stood up. Shisha oseo tamiyad mid. If you do the following things, you die immediately. Ve'eluhen, again, this is the way, don't do these things. Ababa derech v'nityageh. You came from a path and you were very tired. And some people think this is, and then you did this, and then you did that, and then you did that, and that's what causes the problem. All these things together. Then he keys down, you bloodlet. Then you went into the Beit HaMerchatz, nechas the Beit HaMerchatz, shatav v'nishtaker, you drank and then got drunk. Yashan al gabei akarka, then you slept on the ground. V'shimesh mitato, and then you have relations. Rabbi Yochanan says not only do you have to do all these things in order, again, you should avoid all these things in order not to die, but you shouldn't do all these things one after another. You might die, but it's only if you did them in order is it going to cause you to die. She says, even if you do them out of order, you'll be very weak. Is this really true? That you have to do them in order to die? Well, Hama'urat, this is the person's name, she did 3 of these to her servant, and he died. They say he was very weak to begin with, and that's why. Don't take that and say that it'll cause anybody to die if you do only 3 of them. This is what we say, everything in moderation. Okay, if you use a little bit of these, it's good, but if you use a lot of them or eat a lot of them or do this a lot, it's not good. So what are these? Eluheim terech, too much traveling or walking or too much exercise, I guess you could say. Derech eretz, too much sexual relations. Osher umelacha, right, again. So all these are good in a small doses, but not good in too many doses. Osher umelacha, wealth and work. Yayin v'shena, wine, drinking, and sleep. Someone should tell the sleep part to all our teenage children. Hamin, hot water, which sometimes might mean hot. Some people think it means hot showers. I was thinking of those warnings on the saunas and the steam rooms, right? Too much is not good. V'akazat dam, and bloodletting. So again, bloodletting they thought was very good and healthy for you, but again, in moderation. These 8 things make you less potent when you have sexual relations. What are they? My place. Okay. Eluhin, hamelach, salt, ra'av, famine, right? Not eating. Netek, which is a type of disease. Bechia, crying. Shena gabe karka, sleeping on the ground. Gud ganiyot, which are mililot, apparently. Kshot, are a daughter. Okay. These are types of plants, herbs, things. Shelo bizmana, if you eat those things when they're not in their time, okay, that's not the season for them, it's a problem. V'kazatam lamata kiflaim. And if you bloodlet, it's worse double. Okay, that weakens your zera by ×2. Tana kashem shkash, but there's right that it says just like kasher lamata kiflaim, kach yafel lamala kiflaim. Just like bloodletting down below is worse by double than all these other things, actually doing bloodletting on the top part of your body is actually better. So, Amarav Papa, what do we mean by lamala lamata? Turning out I'm a bet. Lamata min habitzim, lamala min habitzim. We're talking about below the testicles and above the testicles. Okay, that's the anywhere in the body above the testicles is good for you, and anywhere below is actually weakened you more. Ukshut shelo bizmana. So now, what about this kshut they talked about? Shelo bizmana, the daughter. Tana kashem shkashe shelo bizmana kach yafe bizmana. Just like it's hard when it's not in its time, it's not good for you, but it's actually the reverse is true when it is its appropriate season. In its season, it's actually good for you. Amar Papa, Zmanat Tamuz, Shalobas Manat Tibet. Its time is in the summer, not time is in what's considered not its time is in the winter. It's actually bad for your seed. And Yome Nisan v'Yome Tishrei lo ma'alu v'lo kashu. But the spring and the fall doesn't do anything. It's not good, it's not bad. Okay, that was the end of our section of all these kind of health advice and advice about how to increase your performance in the bedroom, how to make sure you have strong children or that you don't weaken your body by having sexual relations at the wrong time. So we saw all sorts of tips about that. And before that, we still were talking about remedies and about eating too much and all sorts of things like that. Now we're moving back to the Mishnah. Amar kitvu get lishti. And now we're going to understand the Mishnah a little bit differently than we understood it then. Let's just go back to the Mishnah for a minute. The Mishnah on Daf Samach Zayin Amud had said, if you get kordiakos and you say kitvu get lishti while you're sick with this kordiakos, lo amar klum. But if you say kitvu get lishti and then you got sick with kordiakos and then you said while you were sick with it, lo tichtevenu, we don't count his previous words. Now we understood someone with kordiakos is not of sane mind. And that's the problem. We're now going to see there's a machloket about it. And we're going to try to understand what's not really clear from the Mishnah is what if you said, give a get to my wife, they didn't give it yet, and then you got kordiakos. Would you be able to give the get to her or not? So, would the messenger be able to go give it for this man? Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. We're going to have a machloket Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, which is Rish Lakish, and Rabbi Yochanan, and then we're going to see what the basis of their machloket is. Kotvim v'notnim get la'alt. So they could give the get right away, even if he gets kordiakos, okay, based on his original statement. But soon we're going to understand Rish Lakish a little differently than we assumed it before. Rabbi Yochanan amar ein kotvin ela kashish tapeh. Only once he gets better, you can write the get. You can't write the get while he has kordiakos. You can't give a get to a woman while he's in that state. So my tamid Rish Lakish dekatane ein b'dvarav hachronim klum. It says. If you say no, then don't give her the get. We ignore that, which basically sounds like we give her the get. So Rabbi Yochanan, what's he going to say? Because he says we only give the get later once he gets better. Amar lacha em dvarav hachronim klum. What does that mean? When he gets better, you don't have to ask him again. Are you sure you still want to give the get? Meaning you just give the get once he's better without going back and asking him, even though in the middle he said don't write the get. That's because we ignore whatever he said when he had kordiakos. But but we don't even write the get until he's clear, until he gets back to himself. So, what's the root of their machlok? Rish Lakish medami le'li Hashem. Rish Lakish says someone with kordiakos, and we're going to see in a minute, is someone who can be healed. So basically, while they have this kordiakos, we just view them as someone who's sleeping. Now, if a man says, give a get to my wife, and then he goes to bed, while he's sleeping, the messengers can go write the get and give it because he commanded them to do it. It doesn't matter if he's awake or not. So Rish Lakish said, this guy is kind of like he's sleeping. So he'll be in a long sleep for maybe a few months, but then he'll get out of it. Rabbi Yochanan medami l'shoteh says, no, it's a shoteh. And that's why Rish Lakish says you can give the get even while he has kordiakos because it's just like he's sleeping. He's not a shoteh, which sounds like Rish Lakish would say, if someone was a shoteh, he was fine before, told the messenger to go deliver the get, then became a shoteh and had no sound mind at all, you wouldn't be able to give the get, even though he appointed the messenger before. Okay, we'll come back to this idea soon. Rabbi Yochanan nami l'dam le'li Hashem. So now why didn't Rabbi Yochanan nami le'li Hashem. So Rabbi Yochanan says he's a shoteh, and that's why you can't write a get while someone's a shoteh, even if he commanded you to do it before he was a shoteh. He's not of sound mind. Now you can't give the get. So Rabbi Yochanan, now they're going to ask, why doesn't he say it's like someone who's sleeping? So he says, Yashen lo mechusar ma'aseh. Hay mechusar ma'aseh. To get out of sleep, all you have to do is wake up. That's not really an action. But to get out of kordiakos, you need to do an action. There's a remedy. So until you do that, right, it's not like sleeping, you just wake up from it. It's different. And therefore, you can't give the get. Rish Lakish nami l'dam shoteh. So why doesn't Rish Lakish say it's like a shoteh? Shoteh lo samye biyadam. Hi samye biyadam. A shoteh, there's no cure usually. This has a very easy cure. You can deal with it. You can fix it. Bisra sumka gomre v'chamra marka. You can have red meat on coals with very diluted wine, and that will help heal you. So since there's a remedy, we don't call you a shoteh. So now we're going to question Rabbi Yochanan. Umi amar Rabbi Yochanan, hachi, did he really say this? V'ha'amal Rabbi Yehuda amar Shmuel. Shachap bo shnayim arov shnayim. If somebody slaughters a human, okay, another person, one or two of their esophagus and trachea, the two simanim, two of them or the majority of both of them. V'ramaz v'amal kitvu get lishti. As the person is about to die, they give some sort of a sign that means, write a get to my wife. It's pretty clear that's what he means. They do it, and hopefully before he dies, they give her the get so that she doesn't have to do yibum and chalitza. Vitanya, and additionally it says, they saw him chopped up or on a crucifix. V'ramaz v'amar kitvu get lishti, and he gave this hint us, please write a get to my wife. They do it. So now what do you see here? Why do we say there that they can command someone to do it, but when you have Kordiakos, you can't? To which the Gemara says, you're comparing two totally different situations. When the person got slaughtered or crucified, their mind is still there. It's just their body's starting to fall apart, but they're still totally conscious. But in this case, but when you have Kordiakos, your mind is not functioning properly. So that's the difference. Now, a side question. So that was a question of Rabbi Yochanan compared to these other sources. Now we bring a question on Shmuel. Now, Shmuel had said a minute ago that if you slaughter the simanim, they can hint, right, a get, and you can do it. But Hama, Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, didn't he say in a different place? Totally different situation. And in a minute, we're going to say these are not comparable. But first, we're going to try to compare them. If you slaughter one or both or the majority of both simanim, the esophagus and trachea, ubarach, and he runs away, and you don't find him after that, midima, you can testify that he's dead. Okay, and there's no way somebody survived that. So basically, it's clear they died, even though we don't find the dead body. The isa kadata chayu, and if you want to call him alive at that point, that he could say, "Go give a get to my wife." Amai midima lav. Why can you testify that he's dead? To which they answer the obvious, which is Amre Chayu b'sapolamut. He's alive right at this moment. Then he could command to give a get. And assuming she got the get before he died, it would be a good get. But in terms of, is he dead? Yes, for sure. 5 minutes or 20 minutes later or a year later, we can assume the guy definitely died, even if we can't find him. Another question, if that's the case, then he's not yet dead at that point. Then if someone accidentally kills him at that point, let's say falls on top of him, okay, right at that point, they should go to Ir Miklat because they caused his death, even though it was accidental, right? That's your punishment. Even though he was kind of on his way out, but he wasn't dead yet. So now you caused his death. Why wouldn't you go to Ir Miklat? And if so, Alamatanya, why does it say in the Braita, someone slaughtered two or the majority of two of the simanim of the esophagus and trachea, and then you killed the person by accident, you wouldn't go to Ir Miklat. So why not? Which they say, no, that's not a question. Because Itmar was already said on that. We're concerned that either the wind came because it was open in his throat, he slit his throat, so maybe the wind came in and the wind caused the death, and it wasn't that you fell on top of them, or because the body was convulsing, maybe he caused his own death by convulsing, and it wasn't you who caused it. So there's a doubt as to really whether you were the one who killed him or not, and that's why. But not because he's presumed alive. And not because he's presumed alive. To which the Gemara asks, my Benai, what's the difference between those two opinions, whether it's the wind came or he himself with his convulsions caused the death? So the two options are either you were in a house made of marble where there was no wind at all, and there were convulsions though, so there was no wind, but you can blame it on the convulsions, or the opposite. You slaughtered him outside and the body didn't convulse, so you can't say it was his own body that caused it, but you could say it was the wind. Okay, before we move on to the next sugya, I just want to point out there's a very famous machlok at Rambam and Tor on this topic. Generally, we pass like Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said here, he's a shoteh. Therefore, you cannot give the get while the person is in the state of kordiakos. Okay, different from what we kind of understood in the Mishnah, that you could give it immediately, you just don't cancel the get. But Rabbi Yochanan really says, no, you're a shoteh. When it says we ignore his canceling the get, that just means we could give the get once he's healthy. The Rambam says that if you did it anyway, and they gave him the get, they gave her the get, while he was in the state of kordiakos, the messengers that he told from the beginning to give it, then the get is what we call pasul. Pasul means it's only forbidden on a rabbinic level. So the Torah says, no way, no how. And he says, no. It's forbidden on a Torah level. There is no get. It's klum. It says it's nothing. Okay, it's as if she didn't get anything. But the Rambam uses the language of pasul, which in other places in the Rambam, pasul is clear. It means only rabbinic. And people try to figure out why, everyone asks, how did the Rambam say it's only rabbinic? According to Rabbi Yochanan, he's a shoteh. How can he do it? Their machloket really gets to a very basic discussion about what is shlichut. messengers. We've been talking a lot in Masechet Gittin. If someone sends a messenger, so if I send a messenger to do something for me, and then I'm no longer capable of doing it myself, since the power of the messenger is from me, that says the Torah. So once he has kordiakus, the messenger can't deliver it, and the get is not a get, because all of the messenger's power just comes from me. And if I can't do it anymore, then my messenger can't do it for me. But the Rambam, maybe, at least some people explain the Rambam is saying, that a messenger really is, once I send a messenger to do something, I'm out of the picture. The messenger is operating independently. So if the messenger has da'at and knowledge and capability, then the messenger can bring the get that I commanded him to do before I lost my senses, before this man lost his senses. So now the shaliach delivers the get, even though the person themselves is not, because the shaliach can really do it. Now, what's the problem? Why is it forbidden on a rabbinic level? So some explain that what the Rambam means is it's forbidden on a rabbinic level because it looks like someone who is a shoteh, who's not of same mind, is giving a get, and people will think that a shoteh can give a get. And that's why we don't allow it, but only for rabbinic reasons. It's a very interesting machloka because it gets to, again, depending on how you understand the machloka and why the Rambam says that, but it possibly gets to the root of how shlichut works. Once you become a messenger, are you on your own, or are you still operating on behalf of that original person? And if something in their status changes, then you may not be able to fulfill the obligation, the what you were sent to do. It's a very interesting question. Okay, with that, we're going to go on. Nishtatek va'amrulo niftov get lishtachah. Someone can't speak anymore, so they say, "Would you like us to write a get for your wife?" And then he says, shakes his head. So then they said, right, and then we said, well, ask 3 times a yes or no question and see if they answer. You ask them 3 questions and they're all no. Let's say maybe the person just has a twitch in their head that's causing them to shake their head from side to side, but not really that they need to say no. First you ask a yes and no question, then you ask a yes question, then you ask a no, then you ask a yes. To which they ask, but maybe his head moves first side to side, then up, down, then side to side. And then by doing 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, it doesn't really help. We still really don't know if he's honestly answering or not. So therefore they suggest do 1 no and 2 yes questions, or 1, 2 yes and 1 no, or something like that, to basically switch it around so that you don't end up 1, 1, 2, 1 like that. Or yes, no, yes. Debate Rabbi Ishmael Tana, so they have a different version in the Bright of Rabbi Ishmael of how you check. It's not yes and no questions, but they tell them summer things in the winter or winter things in the summer. What does that mean? If they say take big blankets and sheets in the summer, and it's the winter, and you say take big heavy sheets in the summer, and it's really hot out and you don't need them, and they say yeah, like I want those. That's not going to help, because maybe he happens to be sick and freezing even though it's the summer. Or maybe it was really hot and he had a fever in the middle of the winter and therefore he's hot. That doesn't help. What it must mean is you ask him for fruits that are not relevant in this season at all, right? So there might be places around the world now where you could get fruits every season, but in those days for sure, and some places even now, fruits are seasonal and you can't always get certain fruits in certain seasons. And therefore you ask them things about, can I get some, oranges now? And they're like, no, it's not orange season, or nectarines, it's not the summer. So then you use those kind of questions to see if they really understand or not. Okay, so we saw 2 different ways of trying to identify how people, if they really understand what they're saying, and if their brain is still properly functioning and they just can't speak. Okay, so we had a lot of people who are in tricky situations, right? We're not sure how clear-minded they are. We have the whole kordiakus. Is he treated more like someone who's sleeping or more like someone who's really lost their mind? And we saw debates within Yochanan and Rish Lakish and how they understood it, and then even the interesting Rambam Torah debate within that. Okay, with that, we'll finish today's daf. Wishing everybody a great day.